Welcome to the Skating Lesson Podcast. I'm Jennifer Kirk, a former U.S. ladies competitor and a 3-time world team member.
I'm David Leese. I'm a figure skating blogger and a current adult skater. Now today we are absolutely thrilled to have Canadian journalist and announcer Pj Kwong on the podcast. Pj recently had the temerity to compare Tessa Virtue and Scott Moir to Fine Cheddar and discuss Meryl and Charlie as being craft singles. And we would love to discuss all of it with Pj today here on our preview of the 2013 World Figure Skating Championships about to be held in London, Ontario.
So, Pj, after 4 continents with kind of a controversial competition in the dance event with the Americans and the Canadians, you wrote on your blog, you compared the two teams to each other, and you said that the prominent components and the technical elements were very similar in terms of it could go either way, but you said not the choreography. You said regardless of the result, the difference between Virtue and Moir's Carmen and Davis and White's Notre Dame programs are like comparing a fine old cheddar cheese to craft slices. Both are yummy, both have their place, but one is definitely finer than the other. Elaborate. What do you mean by that? Because I would say craft singles and cheddar cheese, I mean, they're in 2 different places in the grocery store. Like, I mean, that seems a very big difference. So let's hear your opinions on that.
That was shocking from a Canadian. That was.
Do you know what was so interesting was that the fact that I had a fan actually send me a long letter saying that they found it to be highly insulting. So I wrote them back and I said, well, actually, as a single mother of 3, I would not have survived motherhood without craft slices, to be honest. So I really do think of them both as reasons. So craft slices to me are very ordinary. They're pedestrian. You're right. They are in one place in the grocery store. And then a fine old cheddar is going to be someplace else that's a little bit more refined and a little bit finer. When I look at Tessa Virtue and Scott Moir and Meryl Davis and Charlie White, I see 2 outstanding dance teams. When you put those 2 short dances together, to me, it's splitting hairs. I don't know which way to go when you put the 2 short dances together. If we had Deflator Mouse this year and Carmen this year, we're talking apples and apples. I don't happen to believe that the program that Meryl and Charlie have for their free dance is anything particularly unusual or original. I've seen it before, and I've seen much better from them. And because they are as strong as they are, I just think that they're capable of much more. It's a fairly ordinary program to my mind. Now, when I look at the concept and the choreography, so this is Notre Dame de Paris. He's supposed to be the Hunchback of Notre Dame. He's supposed to look a little bit more tortured. He doesn't appear tortured to me. So if you're going to use a program or a body of music, not a body of music, but a piece of music that conjures up an image of something, then you better deliver on the image, as far as I'm concerned. That's my thing. So when we flip it against Carmen, Carmen is the perfect presentation of that theme. So that's where my apples and oranges comes in. I think that both teams truly are outstanding, but I think in this case, whenever like the short dance at the 4 continents, Tessa and Scott won the short dance by 0.44. I mean, really, you can't get any tighter than these 2 teams. But this year, the free dances for me, they're not the same. So
I was going to say it'll be interesting also to see the event in Canada, how that plays in terms of the crowd. I didn't mean to cut you off, but Dave.
No, not at all.
What are your opinions on the 2 free dances? How do you think they stack up?
Well, I think it's interesting that Pj wants to see Deflator Mouse because it lost to Tessa and Scott last year with an imperfect Tessa and Scott.
I know.
Well, what kind of cheese when Tessa Virtue channels Audrey Hepburn for the 17th time? What kind of cheese is that? I want to know. But, no.
Do you think that she's done Audrey Hepburn before?
I think that Tessa gives off a vibe. We knew that she loved Audrey Hepburn without her even skating it. And I think that last year people kind of were like, again, because they had done where Tessa's very regal, which is why I love Carmen this year. I was so excited to see Tessa groping herself. And I think that it was so shocking. Like, Tessa Virtue was in Lily White at the Olympics, and she looks like that girl who has everything organized in her room with a white carpet. I just imagine everything being perfect. So to see her being Carmen is really shocking. I think Carmen loses me in the middle a little bit when the music changes. And that's one thing about Tessa is exquisite. She has the extension that Meryl can never dream of having. I think Meryl and Charlie have come so far since 2010. And I think that if you were going to make that comment about cheese in 2010, I would agree with you 110-fold when comparing Phantom of the Opera to Mahler. I think never going to have Tessa's extension. I think they have a little bit more power throughout the program, which to me, Tessa and Scott have never looked as physically prepared or I know that she has a chronic leg issue, and they've never looked as well trained as Meryl and Charlie have. And I think that they just win kind of on speed. Their combination spin is a little bit faster than Tessa and Scott's. And to me, I wonder about Tessa's health. I mean, she's had chronic leg issues, and they've never seemed to have that same momentum that they had in 2010 when they were. You just knew that if they put down that long program, it was tens across the board. So to me, I think Carmen is brilliant. And I love the beginning. I love the end. I preferred the old lift to the end when she was standing on him. It was so dramatic. But I understand that they had lift, timing issues. Middle section loses it when they go into the footwork sequence. It gets it loses the momentum of the program. And to me, that's the only difference because I was such a fan of it. But I have to say, we've never seen Tessa and Scott perform Carmen perfectly. They had a little bit of stumbles at the beginning of the year. And I think a lot of people wonder, can Meryl and Charlie win in Canada? There's judges, home court advantage. But if Tessa and Scott actually perform Carmen to its maximum at the World Championships, I think that could be an entirely different ball game because we've never seen them deliver it completely to its. So
I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm basing my ideas on everybody skating perfectly. If Meryl and Charlie had skated Deflator Mouse perfectly last year, they would have been world champions. Truly. They lost it because it was not perfection. That free dance, though, was absolutely sensational. When they're able to really demonstrate that in a free dance program, I love it. I buy into it completely. And I think that, again, I think that they're sensational ice dancers. I would love nothing more than to see everybody skate well at Worlds across the board. I mean, that would be a dream as far as I'm concerned. But I think that if Tessa and Scott pare down the free dance a little bit so that they're not compromising the speed and the flow, because I absolutely see your point, Dave. If they pare it down slightly for Worlds, but still deliver that kind of raw intensity, if both teams skate well, I think it's Tessa and Scott's. That's what I think.
What did you think, PJ? Dave, you mentioned some of the leg injuries that Tessa has been bothered by. What did you think about them stopping that program? It was kind of, we didn't know what was going on. Dave and I did the Four Continents recap show. We thought maybe she had breathing problems. Nobody really knew. And then it came out that she did have leg cramps. What did you make of that?
I felt terrible. I mean, there's 2 surgeries, 2 different years where it's just been so difficult. I mean, when they did that rock and roll program, they'd only done something like 2 or 3 complete run-throughs of that program. And 2 of those run-throughs were in competition. So I just think, it's a heartbreak when you work so hard for something and then your body betrays you in a way. I feel sick for any skater that is working through a difficult injury. I just, given the amount of work and the amount of sacrifice and the amount of years, I mean, look at you, Jenny. I mean, you know better than anybody what that's like. And then when your body just doesn't do what you want it to do, I think that's really tough.
I completely agree. I think the only thing that was a little bit odd to me, just this is my opinion as an athlete, is when they stopped the program, it didn't seem like she, tended to the leg. And I think that it was just it was just a weird situation to watch. And Scott, I think we can talk about this. Dave, you want to discuss this? He seemed had to have a little bit of an attitude to a cameraman. And it seemed like it was just one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen in a skating event that I didn't understand as an athlete how she could have recovered so quickly. It seemed just a little bit odd to me that all of a sudden they were able to then finish the program. What did you make of it, Dave? And what do you make of just Scott in terms of I think he's unique in that he does say how he feels, say what he feels, and I kind of like that in a skater.
I love it, and I'll start and go. because I really hate when people pretend to be close friends, and I don't think that Meryl and Tessa go to lunch. They're fierce competitors. I think that they respect each other, but I don't think they're getting their nails done at the salon together. The only 3 times I can remember ice dancers ever stopping are Tessa and Scott in 2011, Tessa and Scott at 2013 at Four Continents, and the Shibutanis earlier this year. Those are the only skaters I really remember stopping a program for something like a cramp. Now, Tessa hasn't talked about her injury much, so we never really know what the status is about her skating. I know that she eschewed having the 3rd surgery for her leg in 2011 and said that she skated differently. Really curious. I think we could have like a 2-hour discussion with her on how she's skating differently and what the status really is. And sometimes, Tessa would say that she was fine in the past because she didn't want to make excuses. And then we heard that it was a bigger injury. So we never really know what's going on with them, which leads to all sorts of speculation why they're stopping. Are they off? Or, and I think it just breeds into it. But I'm, curious about how her leg is, what their training is like. I would love to be in Canton every single day and just watch it. As far as Scott Moir goes, people have so many opinions. Scott's a fresh air. He's a lot of choice words you'll see people say. And I think it's refreshing to see that when someone loses, they're angry. And when someone wins, they're ecstatic. It goes into that thrill of victory and the agony of defeat that Wide World of Sports used to talk about. And I think that Scott used to that. I think half of the interest in Tessa and Scott is their fans, and everyone never knows. Is he in love with her? Does she like him, but she's with someone else? And they have that chemistry that no one ever knows, and it keeps it interesting from season to season. He does seem to get very amped up in competition, and that's his way. I can't wait for the press conferences. Win or lose, I am just there because I love watching what he's going to say. What's your take on him? Because he's not very stereotypically Canadian. We think of Canadians being like Joannie Rochette or Jeff Buttle and them being very polite. So what do you make of
him since he was about 9? And because his oldest brother, Danny, who was also an ice dancer, Danny was in my Ice Nightmare group, which was a all-male synchronized skating group when we raised money for breast cancer. So I've known the Moyers for a very long time, and Scott's the baby brother of 3 boys. So if you don't think that he didn't have to learn how to hold his own in a rough and tumble house of 3 boys, he certainly did. He comes from a home of both his mother and his aunt are figure skating coaches, and there is not a young man who is more respectful than Scott Moir. The fact that he gets mad when the results come out and he's put his heart and soul into it, good for him, because if he didn't care that much, I don't think we'd see on the ice. We see so many skaters. This is what drives me more crazy. Skater comes off the ice. They have done a complete Zamboni program, and they come off and they go, oh, well, I did my best. No, that's not your best. Come on, who are you kidding? So if somebody really cares about what they're doing, then we're going to see that on the ice for better or for worse. And I like it. I know the Moyers well. I know the Virtues well, and I just have nothing but admiration for both kids. But I love the fact that Scott is able to establish boundaries for himself and to be protective of Tessa, because that's the way he was raised, and that's what they do. And I really respect that. So, in fact, for as long as I've known them, I still don't take liberties ever with them, and I always ask permission if I'm able to ask them this kind of question or that kind of question, because I do that of any skater. And I think that probably I could get away with more because, again, I've known them longer, but I just don't think it's fair. So I think that when you work as hard as an Olympian does, then you get to decide a little bit about how you control your life. So getting rid of the cameraman, I also get it. So, and you know what? When you think about it, off the ice, maybe after warm-up, maybe the legs started to hurt, and they made the decision that they would start the free dance, see how it goes. Maybe the getting up into that lift is the part that hurts the most. I honestly don't know. And maybe she thought if she got up, she wouldn't be able to get back down without really hurting herself and landing. So we don't know any of the stuff that went on before they took the ice. But the fact that they were able to sort of skate it out to the end, well, good for them.
I agree. So, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we were talking about in our show is both of these teams really seem to be very focused on getting that number 1 spot. we talked to Elaine Zayak recently, and she said that you have to think that you're the best. And I honestly believe that both Marilyn, Charlie, and Tessa and Scott view themselves as the top dance team for their own reasons. If either one of them loses the World Championships, do you see them all still staying together in Canton? Marina and Igor have obviously split up. Could you see a situation where either team leaves as they both try to make a run for the Olympic title next year?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't even know how to answer that. I don't see. I honestly don't know how to answer that. I mean, I've thought about it, of course, and I thought that if that were to happen, that Tessa and Scott would probably stay where they are. I mean, that makes the most sense to me. I don't know if Marilyn and Charlie would then, move over to Igor potentially. But the ice dance world at the top seems to be very crowded with very few qualified. If you would say, let's go with the devil or the situation that I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I don't think that Marilyn and Charlie were happy finishing in second place last year. They seem to be very focused on getting them back, and I think both teams, for better or worse, think that they are the best team in the world. If anyone moves, I do think that it would be Marilyn and Charlie if they finish in second place, because Tessa and Scott have. I'm under the understanding that Igor used to have more of a part of Marilyn and Charlie's. Like he was kind of the captain. That he was the captain of that team, and that Marina was the captain of Virtue and Moyer. And I think it gets an interesting situation. Their dating lives off the ice. I believe that Meryl is tied to Marina's son. So I think that's a whole interesting thing where, I think that they did do a lot of Igor choreography in the past, so I could see them making that switch. Now, talking about switches, the Shibutanis decided to stay with Marina Zueva, and Chalk and Bates decided to go with Igor. And there were always a lot of criticism of the Shibutanis from the international ice dance community. Perhaps they earned a bronze medal too soon before everyone was comfortable with, due to mistakes at those worlds. How do you see the fact that Chalk and Bates have supplanted the Shibutanis? Do you think that Chalk and Bates are the better team? Or how do you compare them?
Well, I have to tell you, the Shibutanis this year, for me, are the best they've ever been. I love that free dance. I think it's just beautiful, and it's tailored to them superbly. For me, I like the fact that they look a little bit more poised, a little bit more mature, so I prefer them. It doesn't mean to say that Chalk and Bates aren't good in between stage. I really like Maya and Alex and the fact that they've come along and that they've really, they didn't just rest on their laurels after their world medal. They decided to continue to sort of move forward and to really continue to evolve as skaters. So, and that free dance this year, I really love it.
How do you feel about them using the Duchesne's music and the Duchesne's concept?
Okay, so I've lost you a little bit. What do you mean?
They're using that missing program as for their short dance, which the Duchesne's used.
Yes. I'm sorry. I thought you meant, I lost my marbles there for a moment. I thought you meant you wanted me to talk about the Duchesne's before. Do you know what? I thought that music the first time around when I saw it was really quite wonderful. There's something that has a lot of texture, let's say, for that music. So I quite like it. I like it, but I love the free dance. I usually get stuck on one program or another. I'm terrible that way. So I like it. What do you guys think?
I don't think it fits the theme for this year's short dance that well. And I think they've kind of struggled in the short dance. But I do think they're trying to mature them. And I think they have that tough brother-sister thing to fight.
I had a great interview with Sinead and John Kerr when I was at a show a couple of weeks ago in Peterborough. And we were talking about that. Because if you get sort of like that, do a lovey-dovey program, it is definitely kind of icky. Mm-hmm. So I think that Maya and Alex have done well. You're right, though, with trying to put in the polka into the middle of that is kind of tricky. Yeah, you're right.
So speaking of lovey-dovey programs, last year I really felt that Caitlin Weaver and Andrew Pj were robbed of the bronze medal at Worlds. I still feel passionately about it, that there was perhaps the judges didn't want North American sweep 2 years in a row. How do you see them doing? They kind of fell. They weren't at the Grand Prix final this year. I think a lot of it had to do with who they were against, but they finished behind Bobrova and Soloviev, who were behind them at the World Championships. How do you see them doing? She obviously broke her leg. They're coming back for Worlds. How do you see them fitting into this year's event?
Well, I'm so thrilled for them that they're back because this was a huge goal. The fact that they're even on the ice, considering the break that she had and how she explained it to me, I'm amazed. Um, it's kind of a big question mark for me to tell you the truth. I like the free dance that they're doing, but they were starting to rework it when she went down. And the fact that they didn't make the Grand Prix final, they told me that they were using that time in order to sort of work on the free dance and to sort of create more opportunities for them to emote and to really highlight the kind of characters that they were doing. So I guess Andrew continued to work a little bit off the ice while Caitlin was doing the physiotherapy on her foot. So, but they are a huge question mark to me because nobody has really seen them now since November. Is that right? That would be because they weren't at the Grand Prix final, right? So, I mean, I wish them every success. Truly, I do, because there's nobody that works harder. But they're a question mark for me, as are the French team, Pechelin and Boulza. I don't know what's going to happen with them either. I mean, everybody's supposed to be at Worlds, but with his injury, which is going to smart when he's trying to pick somebody up, it's just a big, huge question mark.
Well, speaking of Pechelin and Bourgeat, I want to know what you both think of the Rolling Stones.
I saw it once and I liked it. And I'll tell you what I liked about it. I like the fact that sometimes in the past they've been over the top with some of their themes and it's been a little bit kind of kooky. So the fact that they've picked something that we all understand, and that they've just they've put some rock and roll back into it. I thought it was kind of a fresh approach for them. I liked it a lot. So, but again, they're a bit of a question mark whether or not the time off and trying to get trained up again, if that's going to be enough time, I don't know. But I thought it was a nice, refreshing change, and it was something that I didn't have to think too hard about. So I like it from that standpoint.
How about you, Jen?
I like the red pants. I'm a fan of the red pants. I like red pants on guys. I think it's a statement. But, yeah, they are the question mark coming in off the injury, as well as Caitlin and Andrew. But some of their lifts, I'm kind of up and down in terms of the French team. They do a lift in the middle of their program where she's her legs are together and they come in together and she's leaning back, and I just think it's messy. It kind of breaks up the flow of the program. But then the lift they do after that, she's leaning back or he's leaning back, and I just think that's kind of how their skating is to me. There's some positives and there's some negatives, and it just at times it's a little bit messy. But I think, like you said, PJ, it's a program that we can all relate to. Finally, something that we can latch onto, and they are my pick for the bronze medal. What do you think, Dave?
I disagree. Okay, because I think that while if they were doing well all fall, they would be. But the Russians, knowing Russians, I have a Russian skating coach, and she watches all of the skating on TV. And last year, she always watches Russian satellite TV, and she'd be like, "Tarasova se Bobrova, she like a piece of meat, no salt, no pepper." And they made a coaching change. So, and there's been such a push for Bobrova and Soloviev this year. I think they've improved. Dance is political, and I really see them we haven't seen Caitlin and Andrew. We haven't seen the French in a while. I could see the Russians moving in for that bronze medal. I could just see it magically happening, where all of a sudden they're in the mix.
I don't think it's magic. I think they're really good. And
I don't think they're as good as the other teams. I'll put it that way. I think the other teams are...
I think that under Julien, I think that they're real contenders because I always liked them, to tell you the truth, when they were in 2010 and they did their side-by-side sort of Russian sailor things for their short dance. Loved it. Loved the creativity. And now with this coach, I mean, I think that they are a team reborn. Her posture has improved. She used to always sort of be bent at the hip. But I loved, they're junior world champions from, I can't remember when. Anyway, but I've always liked them. So they're my pick for bronze, because I think that, again, doesn't mean that the result will stay the same for next year necessarily, but I think that the work that they did in the off season and coming into this season, I think that they really made it. Oh, that's Sonic the Wonder Dog. Sonic, go upstairs. I thought it wasn't going to happen that way, but it did. So I think, and the fact that they beat Caitlin and Andrew, I think the writing's a little bit on the wall. And if the French and the Canadians haven't had the chance to sort of rework their programs and have the miles on the ice, I think that they're starting from behind the eight ball, is what I think. So.
And before we talk about our last dance team, the program that has everyone talking this year, Elena Ilyinic and Nikita Katsalapov. What do you make of the Ghost? Tatiana Tarasova hates it. She made it known that they will never win with this program. They haven't won with this program and that they won't. What do you make of Ghost? We see her mouthing the words. I think it's a mess. I think it's wrong. I think that they need to leave Nikolai and go to better coaching. I think they could go to Igor. What do you make of this?
I don't like it. And I make no bones about it. I think that they're an overrated team. I think Gaspaja Tarasova, she says it completely correctly. I watched it for the first time and I thought, qu'est-ce que c'est? That's French for what is this? So I think that there's a push for them as well. I don't like them as much as I like Bobrova and Soloviev. I don't like that Ghost program. I think that Ghost program is terrible. There's just nothing really to recommend it. Sorry.
Jenny, how do you feel about the Ghost?
Okay.
Too bad I left myself, eh?
Let me just say, I love the movie. I grew up just being all about the movie. Yeah, it's a wonderful movie. I don't know what version they're using, but I felt when I was watching their performance, it was like I was watching Disney on Ice. I thought it was weird that she was lip syncing. The last portion of music, I felt like I was tuning through the country channel on the dial, and it's just background music, and it's a really odd movie to portray on the ice. I don't understand. I don't understand how their outfits work with it. I thought I was at Disney on Ice, and it really doesn't do any favors for their skating, and it's just odd.
Well, it's kind of when people do things that are inauthentic to them. Mm-hmm. That's what drives me nuts. Find something that actually works for your skaters, not just trying to bank the points and trying to move people ahead. I want to see something that actually fits the skaters, and I don't think that this program fits them very well.
No, I completely agree.
I don't think they've ever had programs that have. I think the thing with them is that she has lovely extension. She lacks a bit of power. They're both facially just gorgeous people. But we were introduced to them at Junior Worlds with him shooting her in the face at the end of their Schindler's List program. And I'm kind of left like this with them every single year. Ever since he shot her in the face, there's something weird with their programs every single year. I don't think that they're in the right direction. I think that they need a complete reworking. And I agree. I think that they're the most overrated team out there. Yeah. I love watching them because I think that they have wonderful qualities, but comparing them to the top teams, I don't. So what are your picks on the top three at the Worlds? Jenny, go, PJ, go, and then I'll give mine.
Okay, I'm going Meryl, Charlie, Tessa, and Scott, and then Pejra and Borja. Am I pronouncing this right? This was Dave's whole thing. He was doing phonics with me yesterday. Did I pronounce their names right?
You're pretty close. Peshla and Borza.
Peshla and Borza.
Perfect.
Okay. I'm fans. All right. Your turn, PJ.
I'm going Tessa and Scott, Meryl and Charlie, and Bobrova and Soloviev.
Good job on the pronunciation.
Yes. I think I'm going to go with Meryl and Charlie by a hair over Tessa and Scott. Camera angle on Scott Moyer, please, during the results. And then I would like to see Bobrova and I think Bobrova and Soloviev will be the bronze medalists this year.